Hey guys, happy September. It's going to be a sunny one apparently. Hurrah! And a very big welcome to the Holy Shed, in which I have succumbed to requests to revisit my talk at Greenbelt this year. I hope that those of you who were there won't mind hearing it or some of it again and that you will stick with me. Obviously, I can't recreate the talk in quite the way that I gave it at the festival. You'll have to get the recording from Greenbelt to hear that. But I am going to give you my own sort of cut down version with a few differences thrown in. Now, the title itself should give you a hint that I did talk a lot of shit, if you know what I mean. Someone actually counted 78. I mean, I don't know if they heard anything else I said. 78. But I promise this wasn't me simply being gratuitous. I just find that describing someone as giving a shit expresses something that doesn't quite come across so well when it's put more politely. Anyway, I sometimes say that the world is divided between give a shits and don't give a shit. People who care about other people, about the planet, about creating a better, kinder world for all, and those who don't. Now, of course, it's not that black and white. It's not so straightforward, and I'll come to that in a moment. But in fact, I'm convinced that far more people do give a shit than we're sometimes led to believe, especially in the media. Last year, Helen Lewis produced a fabulous programme for Radio 4 called The Church of Social Justice. You can still hear it on Sounds, by the way, in which she argued that politics is the new religion, not the kind of Labour conservative type of politics, but the politics of social justice. Traditional religion, she said, is declining and political movements are taking their place. And it's ironic, so far as I can see, that, in essence, religion or church is the natural home of the politics of social justice. But in fact, in many ways, it would appear that we've completely lost that ball. According to Helen Lewis, the Church of Social Justice is the church young people are turning to in droves. Definitely not to the pointy building kind of church or to mainstream religion as such. Also ironic is this, that the new Church of Social Justice mirrors in many ways the old church by producing its own religious factions. There are full-on fundamentalist give-a-shits. You see loads of them on social media who frankly don't give a shit about anyone who doesn't agree with them. And then there's more open, more liberal give-a-shits, if you like, who recognise that we're all victims in some way of wider powers and structures and trends. And of course, there's the crowd who argue very passionately that all this wokeness is political correctness gone mad. So yes, there are all kinds of give-a-shits. But I'm talking about those who, knowingly or not, try to stick to the golden rule, treating other people as we would like to be treated if we were in their shoes. All of this is described very often as culture wars, and maybe war is not too strong a word. Bullying and even violence is sometimes part of it. I don't know if you saw this story just over a week, it was just before Greenbelt actually, about this lovely lady, Laura Ann Carlton, a 66-year-old mother of 9, who was shot dead outside of her store in Cedar Glen, California, for displaying LGBTQ plus flags outside the shop. Look at her. I mean, dear Jesus. Peter Tatchell, the LGBT rights campaigner. He's gay, but he's not trans. But he says that because he is a trans supporter, he regularly gets death threats. He gets told that he's going to be castrated, he's going to be raped, he's going to be beaten up for his support of trans people. So, war may not be too strong a term. When we hear about all of this, when we hear about, hatred crimes connected with race or gender or sexuality or religion or whatever, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. It's easy to think that hatred and bigotry are everywhere and that's winning. But I want to tell you, they are not winning. They are losing. And that these outbursts of hatred and, bigotry are really the manifestations of desperation and fear in the face of an underlying tide of progressiveness that has been going on for decades now. They feel that their mean, little, bigoted world is being threatened. Well, it is, actually, because it's prehistoric and, it's part of the past. It isn't part of the future that we're moving into. My book, How to Be a Bad Christian, basically assumed that many people follow the way of Jesus without even knowing it. They're not religious, but they do give a damn. I took the funeral about a month ago now of a woman called Jean, and when I was talking to her friends, she didn't really have any family as such, but she was very attached to one particular family who I've known for a long time in North London from when I was a vicar there. And they told me that in the course of describing Jean, they said that she had been a co-founder of something called Animal Aid in North London. And then we went on talking about other things. And I want to say, hang on a minute. Is that really true? So anyway, afterwards, I went and Googled it and found that, yes, sure enough, she and a woman called Doris, Jean and Doris, very ordinary, working class North London women, had actually founded a thing called Animal Aid, which is a charity for neglected and, abused cats in particular. They were dog walkers, and they were walking their dogs in Caledonian Park or somewhere, I don't know, in North London. And they just started talking about this, and they gave a damn. They gave a shit enough to do something about it. So in 1972, this charity was set up, and I was privileged to take Jean's funeral. Just amazing. Blessed are the give-a-shits. But back to the point that it's not simply a case of give a shit on this side and don't give a shit on that side. Well, of course it isn't. This makes me think about the parable in Matthew's Gospel about the sheep and the goats. Do you remember that parable? Which appears to present a vision of final judgment in which sheep are over here and goats are over there. Now, I've always struggled with that. Not least because I just can't believe it's that simplistic. And especially when, as I've so often heard it taught, that what this really means is Christians and non-Christians. Hey guys, that's got nothing whatsoever to do with that story at all. But surely human experience, however you look at divisions of people, is more complicated than a crude kind of goodies and baddies thing. I mean, we're all some kind of mixture, aren't we? And by the way, if you read the preceding passage to that particular bit, where Jesus says, I was hungry and you gave me food, I was in prison and you visited me, and all those things, it's quite clear that then the judgment that follows on from that isn't about whether we're Christians or not, isn't about whether you've accepted Jesus or not, it's about whether or not, basically, we've given a shit. But look, if divine judgment can't do better than a straightforward binary goody-baddie thing, then I'm out of here. I'll be an atheist, because I think even me and my stupidity can do a better job of judgment than that. So I can't believe there must be something more sophisticated. And if I attempt to take the passage seriously in Matthew, which I do, I have to believe in a God who distinguishes on a deeper level than appearances, a God who can distinguish my stupid, selfish moments from the greater direction of my heart toward love and compassion and justice, which is what I always pick myself up and point myself towards. In reality, because honestly, sometimes, it's true. I really do give a shit. Sometimes I'm proud of myself for doing that. Sometimes not as much as I'd like. I hope that I'm progressing, as I say, pointing myself in the right direction. There is a wonderful old idea in Judaism which is finding fresh traction. It's what they call tikkun olam. That's a Hebrew term which simply means repair the world, tikkun olam. And it's a term which has gone through various stages over many centuries within Judaism, including and notably the teaching of the 16th century Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is regarded as the father of Kabbalah, the mystical branch of Judaism. And there's a whole stuff which I can't go into right now, but he told a parable which expressed the fact that the world is broken and that God calls us to be the ones who gathers the fragments, the shards of God's light in the world and bring them together, and not just sort of sit back and wait for God to do it. Tikkun olam has always been part of Jewish consciousness, right back to ancient Israel's laws about, welcoming strangers, caring for the land, the Jubilee principle, lots of things. But it's now a banner for all kinds of Jewish initiatives for social justice, including, by the way, initiatives which challenge the horrendous Israeli government policies toward Palestinians. And in many ways, tikkun olam has become quite associated with that particular cause of injustice toward the Palestinian people. What I like about tikkun olam is that it comes from a mystical faith tradition. It isn't just social justice, it's social justice with a particular theology and a particular spiritual heart. To me, tikkun olam calls not just Jews, but all of us to pursue a soulful, justice-driven, ultimately multi-faith spiritual roadmap for the healing of our world. But it's important to note that where am I now? Just let me get in the right place here. Yeah, it's important to note that tikkun olam has a double edge to it. It's basically saying that we can't repair the world without repairing ourselves. We're part of the brokenness, and we can't repair our own brokenness without repairing the brokenness of the world. The two things are completely bound up together, and we pursue them not first one and then the other, but the two things really move along together. So, for example, the climate emergency, I think, is speaking to us very loudly, not just about the need of the world to be repaired, but about our need to fix ourselves, to fix the brokenness that has produced this in the first place, the brokenness that dictates that we cling tenaciously to certain ways of being in the world, to consumerism, to carbon-based lifestyles, to a culture addicted to everlasting progress. And so we are to repair the climate. In order to repair the climate, we must first and importantly heal ourselves. The big point, I think, about tikkun olam is that it's about a partnership. It's not just about humans doing what humans can do. It's about humans humbly working together with God in the business of our own healing and the healing of the world. Now, I've quoted this before in the Shed, but the philosopher Stephen Toulmin wrote, "We have a choice between two attitudes toward the future. It's a choice between imagination and nostalgia, between facing the future and backing into it." And I think that so much of mainstream politics, especially with regard to the climate crisis, but to do with many issues, mainstream politics completely give themselves to backing into the future, mostly because they want to hold on to power rather than solve the problems. Or at least that's how it appears. But I think the church as well is often backing into the future, holding nostalgically to the past instead of grasping the future. So here are 4 spiritual commitments to help us on our give a shit pilgrimage, if you like. First of all is wakefulness. You could call that wokefulness, by the way. You can argue all you like about woke, and goodness knows it's become an expletive to many people. But to me, it's the biblical principle of staying awake and alert, of being woke, of being mindful about what's going on in the world, who's benefiting, who's suffering, Who is excluded and bullied? Who are the people holding the power? And these are things that we dare not fall asleep to. We need to be awake to what's going on in the world, to be informed about it. And I think the word woke is demonized, as it often is, because it symbolizes a new progressive outlook which is gaining ground, and especially among young people, but amongst lots of us oldies too. It feels to people who are still struggling to with their nostalgic hanging on to the past, it feels threatening to an old order, which in fact is diminishing. So yeah, I want to be woke. I want to be awake and alert to the experiences of others. And this means looking and listening to things that frankly I'd often rather turn away from. I'd rather just switch off from these things, fall asleep to them. Things which are new to my experience that oh geez, that does my head in. I can't really think about what that. Look, it's easier in a media age to become numbed to the suffering that we see and hear about. And we do need to protect ourselves, by the way, from emotional overload. But we also need to hear the experiences of other people. We must not just fall asleep in the face of injustice, pain, and bigotry. We need to be awake to compassion. If being a follower of Jesus means anything, I think it means being woke in the true and deepest sense of that term. And one of the problems is, that we often think we don't know people who are in this, suffering, place of suffering. For 4 years at Greenbelt back in the 90s, I led a late night debate in which, amongst other things, I always inserted the subject of LGBT issues. And it's interesting how people would say to me, but I don't know any gay people. The fact is, everybody knows gay people. They're at least a tenth of the population. It's just that we don't necessarily see them for who they are. And so it's important to get beyond the sort of abstract discussions of the Bible and theology and stuff, which are important, but we need to wake up to their people's stories and to hear what's going on with them. So, as we go forward, being wakeful is very, very important. And then secondly, generosity. I think that whilst I aspire, yes, to be woke, on the other hand, I would have to say, I don't really much like the idea of cancel culture. And lots of people who fit themselves into the woke category are quite vehement about cancel culture, about not wanting to give a platform or not hearing any other voices from people that don't agree with them. But, listening must go both ways. And in this context of cancel culture, I wonder, what does loving your enemies mean, as Jesus told us? Well, I think it means respecting the person enough to listen, even when we passionately disagree with their position or what they're saying. I think we can argue principles like hell, but always remain respectful towards people. Once we begin to treat people as something less than human, then we have become less than human ourselves. Last year at Greenbelt, there was a wonderful woman called Bonnie Greer, an African-American woman who lives in this country now, who's a writer, an art critic. And she was talking about the problems, essentially, of cancel culture, because when she was invited onto Question Time some years ago with the BNP leader, Nick Griffin, whose policies and attitudes are just horrible. And she was castigated by friends as well as others, saying, why do you even sit next to this man? Why are you even talking with him? And the way she explained this at Greenbelt, she said that her dad grew up in the southern states in a culture, in a society in which black people were not allowed to speak. They were unheard. They were cancelled. They could only speak if they were spoken to. And her dad, who'd lived with this throughout his life, of being cancelled, being unheard, he said, Bonnie, always listen to people and then give better arguments. That's such a fantastic piece of wisdom, I think. And the fact is, guys, people can change. People can change. People do change. Some of you may remember me showing this little video about a Trump supporter who was at an anti-Trump rally, and through that he had an encounter, a wonderful encounter with a young Muslim woman, and the rest of it makes sense, I think, when you listen to it.
I noticed you with the hat,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that you were surrounded by some people, and I noticed that they were being kind of threatening.
I heard a click of a lighter right behind my ear, and there were about 3 people trying to light my shirt on fire with lighters.
And then somebody snatched your hat off your head. And that's the point where something kind of snapped inside me because I wear a Muslim hijab, and I've been in situations where people have tried to snatch it off my head.
Wow.
And I rushed towards you and I just started screaming, "Leave him alone, give me that back."
I don't think we could be any further apart as people, and yet it was just kind of like this common, that's not okay moment. You are genuinely the only Muslim person I know. It's not that I've actively avoided, it's just,
Yeah.
I've just never been in the position where I can interact
Mhm.
for an extended period of time. So I guess my views on the Muslim community have been influenced by a lot of the news articles and things of that nature.
I feel like a lot of times in the media, you don't see the normal Muslim, the one that listens to classic rock like I do. You don't meet that Muslim.
Can you tell me about where you grew up? What was that part of your life like?
So I was born in Baghdad, in Iraq. I moved to the US when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
Being a Muslim girl, I stood out in almost every single way that you can in middle school, the worst time to stand out. What about you? How was it like when you grew up?
I was homeschooled,
Mhm.
so it was a vastly different experience socially. I didn't have, I guess, as many friends as most people would. I only went to public school 1 year of my life, and I got in 3 fights, and I lost all of them. I actually lost a lot of friends because of this election, because of my political stance. So I hope that I can be the reason that someone decides to talk to someone as opposed to just cutting them out of their life or blocking them on Twitter,
Yeah.
you know?
I'd like for this to encourage other people to engage in more conversations with people that you don't agree with.
That's what it's all about. I'm so glad I wasn't the only one who felt like that.
That is such an amazing story, isn't it? And it says it so much more eloquently than I can possibly put into words, that we always need to be generous toward others. We can disagree passionately, vehemently, and we need to. But at the same time, we can, respect people as fellow human beings and, work forward in hope, really, which is my next point, really. The third commitment on our Givership pilgrimage is hope. And, hope is often seen as something quite wishy-washy. Hope is not naive. It is not an opiate to dull the pain of some oppressive reality all around us. Oh, it's awful, but I'm just hoping for the best. Hope, I think, may be the greatest act of defiance that we can muster against a politics of pessimism and a culture of despair. I don't know if you have heard me talk in the past about this amazing woman, Sharon Brous. She's a rabbi, and this is her husband and family with her. And she describes in one of her blogs about the morning after the election in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected, and all of the things that she'd hoped for and worked for and looked towards in that election completely fell to pieces all around her, and it was devastating. And she says this, she says, the morning after the election, our kids ran into our room and we wept. I told them, there's a lot of callousness and cruelty out there. From this point forward, our home is an oasis of love and justice. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. We listen to one another. We lead with love. We go out into the world today being exactly who we've always been, but better, more compassionate, more generous, more awake, because that's what it will take to build a more just and loving world. Fantastic. And, that's what I think hope really is. It's the way I define hope is that it's defiant imagination, even in the face of despair. Hope, friends, is not optimism. Optimism is an emotional. It comes and goes. Hope isn't an emotion, it's a commitment. It may involve emotion, but it's deeper than that. It's a commitment. Sometimes I feel optimistic, sometimes not. Hope is a commitment to live in a certain way, whatever I feel, come what may. To hope, therefore, is a fundamental way in which we can all give a shit. Now, I believe that these 3 commitments will be very important moving forward in the days that lie ahead. Being awake to what's going on, facing up to the bad stuff in ourselves as well as in others, confronting our own brokenness, our own tendencies to not give a shit. Being generous towards enemies, so-called, as well as friends, listening to their stories too, their concerns and fears, knowing what it is that makes them take the stance that I so dislike and oppose. Because usually there's a whole story, there's a pile of stuff behind that. And then thirdly, being hopeful when it feels like that we're losing big time. I mentioned this last week, I think, or sometime recently, but Chris Packham, in his series Earth on the BBC, is well worth listening to. But if nothing else, listen to the last 15 minutes of the last episode, where he draws hope from humans being such an extraordinary species. He says we're adaptive, creative, imaginative. We've come a long way, but he says our peak experience won't be that we stood on 2 feet way back there, or that we learned to draw on walls of caves, or standing on the moon. He says our peak experience is yet to come, and that will be finding how to live through the climate crisis, and also learning how to live kindly together. And he closed with these emotional words. He said, in the very near future, our species will need to reach the zenith of its achievements, and all humanity will have to learn to put our Earth first, which in many words is that we're all going to have to learn to give a shit. And I think that's, I think Chris Packham, he is a beautiful give a shit. The core of God's requirement of us, the core of our humanity, is given in Micah 6:8, which says, what does the Lord require of you? What is the very core and heart of everything to do with your faith and religion? It's this: to love kindness, to act justly, and to walk humbly with God, or let go of that damned ego and live as if it isn't all about you. I'll be honest, I think giving a shit is the very heart of what it means to follow Jesus. I think these 2 things go together. I'm still trying to get the hang of it myself, but it's what I aspire to more than anything else. So I'm going to finish now with a prayer. Blessed are the give-a-shits, the ones who can't stand by while others suffer or the planet groans. Blessed are those who laugh at themselves. They will never lack stuff to laugh at. Blessed are the buskers who lift our spirits when we're stressed and rushing for the tube. Blessed are those who don't get into social media squabbles, who starve daft people of attention. Blessed are those who spontaneously decide to pay forward at a coffee shop or make up the difference when a shopper hasn't got enough at the checkout. Blessed are the big issue vendors who stand or sit on the street in all weathers to make an honest quid or 2. Blessed are the cheesemakers who make a lot of crackers very happy. Blessed are those who know the difference between a mountain and a molehill. Blessed are those who stay human instead of playing God. Their life will be a lot easier. Blessed are the cracked, for they let the light in. Amen. Okay, well, I want to propose a toast now, but I just need to tell you, first of all, that a devoted shedster, a very beautiful, lovely woman called Jenny Hawkes, died last weekend while I was at Greenbelt. And I'm so, so sad to hear that. If you go, you can still look at her on Facebook, Jenny Hawkes. You find her, she painted these most gorgeous paintings, and almost every day she put one of her watercolor paintings up. And a meditation, some thoughts about something in life, which I always found was authentic and worth reading and helpful. And I'm very sad that we lost her last week. So if you've got a drink handy, I would like you to raise a glass with me to Jenny Hawkes, a toast to Jenny, and a toast to compassion in our world and to everyone who cares enough to act compassionately in their daily life, as she certainly did. To life, l'chaim. Well, that's it. That was my little Greenbelt excursion. I hope that you found that helpful and interesting. If you like what I'm doing here in the shed, hey, you can buy me a coffee. You just have to follow the link which is on the screen here. And we're deeply grateful to all of you who support us in this way and lots of other ways too. And just rushing on, just to say that this week, if you missed the Leonard Cohen Soul Space that I did recently, and lots of people got in touch saying, oh, can you please put it up on YouTube or whatever? Well, I couldn't, because they'd just take it straight down because of all the material that's included in it. But if I'm still trying to work out a way to do that. But if you can join me on Wednesday at 12:30, hosted by St. Ethelburger's Centre of Reconciliation and Peace, I'll be doing that again. It's a Zoom thing. You just need to get a link. You can get it by contacting, if you go to the St. Ethelburger's website, to the events, there's a link there. I will also put one up in the next day or two, and I'd love it if you could join me because, well, as you know, huge fan of lovely Leonard Cohen. So there it is. I'm going to finish with a poem by Mary Oliver in a moment, which is about things that she's learned so far. And it's a beautiful poem. And thanks for being with me here today in the Holy Shed. I'll be carrying on here next week, getting back to stuff that I'm turning over and thinking about for the book that I'm just trying to put together and shape at the moment. So, hey, this is what we've been talking about, isn't it? Go out into the world and be kind to people about you, to the world itself, to yourself. Stay human, and I'll see you soon.